And for example, how do you distinguish between like burnout and say trauma?
No, I think those are like in some ways very similar and very different things, if that makes any sense. Like I would say from a biological point of view, biochemistry, when you've experienced trauma, you can be in a constant state of fight or flight. So from the biochemistry point of view, it's very similar to burnout. Yeah, so subtle difference, but so what leads to burnout? But trauma can lead to burnout, like PTSD, but it's not burnout in itself. It's a state, it's a constant state that can lead you to just be completely depleted because you're constantly in fight or flight. You're constantly, rethinking of what you've been through, what you experienced specifically. And that's often the case in PTSD. And then you freeze, you've got really that sympathetic nervous system reaction, full blast. And eventually you just get to that point of burnout where you've depleted yourself of every hormone that you need to gain energy. So I would say, this is where the difference is, even though like from a biochemical point of view, there's a lot of similar things happening.
Do you think that humanitarians mix up the two things and because there's a lot of, I hear a lot more talk about burnout than PTSD. And
Yeah.
I wonder if like to what extent there's mixing and then organizations avoid talking about the latter.
Yeah.
Um, and like, it's like, as you say, burnout is kind of like as common as having a coffee talk, no? So,
Yeah.
um, what should organizations be doing? Because there's a lot of, you talk about self-care and we need to, but what about duty of care? And then we come back to the question I asked about national staff. What about, what should, because you talk about the industry, and change the culture, because what I see is like people going in who know that this hardcore thing isn't right, but end up conforming, even though they know and they see that it's damaging, it kind of sucks them in.
Yeah.
It's not that they're not aware, because it's 2023. It's not back in the 70s anymore. So I mean, why is it that there isn't sufficient, in your opinion, sufficient critical mass to go, hey, no, this isn't right, and something's wrong, and leaders are burnt out, and then is it a never-ending self-fulfilling prophecy always, or how do you see it? And I know there's about 20 questions in that. But how do you see all of that? I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean,
from the bigger organizations who do have muscle enough, etc.
yeah, I'll tell you something. I don't have a perfect answer to that because obviously I don't have all the answers, but
Yeah,
it is
we're just
my
chatting.
yeah, no, I know for sure. But it is my deepest belief that as humankind we have lost touch with who we are, and so I think that really is more what is at play here, more generally speaking, because there's burnout in every industry in the world, like it's not just humanitarians. There's trauma in every industry in the world. I mean, you can work in construction and see your colleague be injured by a stone and then feel traumatized by it for the right reasons, just like that fear that I just think we all of us in a way have just lost connection to our unique biology. We live in a society where, for a long time, even though now that we talk more about mental health, but for a long time it was just about ignoring but working. It's just this capitalism. And I'm not against capitalism. This is not my goal to say that either. But I do think that we have lost touch with our priorities as humankind. Like the simple fact that we cannot survive in nature on our own anymore is a sign. The simple fact that we suffer epidemic of loneliness is another fact, because I mean, originally we're social creatures. We are meant to live in communities, and we even lost touch with that. And we've lost touch with how we should eat natural foods, whole foods. We've lost touch with observance. We're constantly on the go. There's always emails, smartphone, social media. There's constant noise, and that's true in the humanitarian world just as much as anywhere else. There's constant noise, and I think unless we learn as a society and humans to step back and get out of the noise a little bit and stop creating our identity around what we do, it's going to be hard to change. So that's kind of a more like philosophical response I'm giving you, but I mean, I do think that, you know, the reason why it's so hard within organization to change is because partly of that, not only of course, but partly, and because, you know, the very nature of the job of a humanitarian worker is to help others. So, you know, it's easy to get in the wrong direction to do so, you know, to
Yeah, that's super interesting. What I would like to ask you is, it's not so. For example, people who, if we're talking about like international staff that kind of go and come back and go and come back, that type of dynamic, like maybe you and I, you know, we'd go and then come back, or we'd be managing from HQ or whatever, and hearing and seeing and stuff. What about people who are working and living in armed conflict zones with high amounts of violence? What, from a functional medicine point of view, what happens to their cortisol? Because there seems to be this kind of, you know, especially when we talk about transfer of risk onto national staff in certain zones where white people are a threat, a kidnap threat, etc. There's this kind of unsaid thing that perhaps they're immune because they're used to it.
So I think there's different things here. I mean, I don't think they're immune to anything. I think they're human beings, and they just suffer just as much, and if not more, because they're suffering the
There's no way
consequences.
out.
Yeah, there's no way out.
Staying home.
We get a way out. They never do. So there's, yeah, no, I think they're not immune. They probably suffer more than what we even know, than what they show, and there's a massive gap within the humanitarian world to take care of them properly and help them with what they have to deal with. Especially when there's massive security incidents, you just the expats kind of leave the base, and then the locals stay behind, and then they're just as much as risk as the others. So yeah. Now, this being said, you were asking about the biochemical part, right? And there's two things that they have that can help them, I would say, a little bit more. And I'm just saying a little bit more, just
Got it. A tiny bit more.
But they have something that expats don't have, in the sense that they have community, they have family on the spot. So that's, you know, healthy relationships and community support is really key in our health. You know, when you look at health from a holistic point of view, so many diseases are actually just due to loneliness, or, you know, or thinking patterns, you know, negative thinking, negative self-beliefs. And I do think that, you know, the fact that they have that support mechanism a little bit more present for some of them, not all of them, of course, that can support them in dealing with some of the experiences, but that's of course not enough. If they're based in their hometown with their family support, I think that can help them. I'm not saying that's enough. I don't think so. But from a biochemical point of view, that sense of belonging and the sense of feeling surrounded and being able to have a dinner with family at night. Again, from a biochemical point of view. So if they have that is something that, biochemically will help them deal with things better. Which expats obviously don't have because they're far away from their family. And don't have that support mechanism that alive in the same way. The second point I want to say, and maybe I'll be controversial here, but I honestly think national staff have more perspective than we do.
In what? Explain that to me.
We're spoiled. We're spoiled brats. We live in the Western world where we have everything that we need, and we've got hot water, potable water, like drinking water. We've got, like warmth, comfort, access to all sorts of foods. We've got everything. We've got it all. And when we lack it, we tend to complain like kids that we don't have it and that it's so hard. And I think national staff, to be very honest with you, they're much more resilient than what we are, and they have much more perspective on life. I'm talking life, like, because they have so much more experience of life that we don't have, that we'll probably never have, because again, we're spoiled. So I think, honestly, again, and this goes again in the line of biochemical reaction, like this, having a more resilient mindset, and spiritual, because often national staff, depending, I've noticed it, at least, I mean, I'm sure it's not a generality, but they're often very spiritual people. They believe in God or something else that supports them, and that belief keeps them alive. That belief really of being part of something bigger than themselves really keeps them, give them hope that things will get better. And very often we don't have that.
Well, why do you think that's an interesting point? I'll just ask you one last question. Why do you think it's so hard for humanitarians to leave?
I think there's so many factors at play, but one thing is what I've noticed with humanitarians: the job becomes the identity. So in order to leave, you need to recreate an identity, and that's extremely difficult. So you need to detach from the humanitarian identity in a way, and that's hard. And then there's also the part that, it's an exciting job. It's an exciting job. Let's be honest. It's diverse. It's thrilling. Yeah, there's adrenaline. Yeah. I mean, what kind of a job back in the Western world so you can get that gives you that same thrill and that same and validation, yeah, and sense that you're doing something bigger than yourself, that you help others. What else? And it's not like we have an emergency every week somewhere in Europe, so there's that. I think it's hard to let go of that. That came out a lot in the pilot, actually, because I only had participants who were based in the field, and they were all actually thinking of a transition, but then they were like, oh, I don't know if I could do an office job or, and that's actually why often they either, transition into an office job in a bigger organization, maybe based at HQ, or they become entrepreneurs.
Or a mixture of both.
A mix of both, it's really because it's hard to belong somewhere else than what we've done. And then simply said, at the end of the day, when you need to reinvent yourself, what do you do? Like I said, it's that big question. I wouldn't even know what to do, because when you're a humanitarian, your hobby was your job. So what do you do after that? like what's, it's like you have to reinvent
So how
everything.
did you manage all of that then? Because you were on the field and you managed operations and programs from HQ. So how did you manage the identity and what to do and all of that? What was your process?
I think I'm still processing it, to be honest with you, because when there's an emergency happening in the world, my first instinct is, okay, you know what, let's pack the bag, let's go. So in a way, it hasn't left me fully, but I recognize now. I recognize now that I need a different life. I need some. My body and mind need something else. And I know if I went back, um, I would probably be better than before because I'm more balanced. But at the same time, I would ignore a part of me that needs to ground and restore still. So, but it took me a very long time to know what I wanted to do outside of that, to know who I was outside of that.
Do you think it's possible to do humanitarian work without the damage?
Yes, yes, I think so. I think so. One has to have a really strong desire for self-growth. I think, a strong desire to
Some
have
introspection.
balance. Yeah, to do introspection, I think, because you need to be able to question your belief systems often in order to know whether you're on the right track or not, and not get sucked in by the system.
Yeah, rather than the introspective, emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence and introspection aren't values that are very
No.
sought after in the humanitarian world, or empathy or compassion, things that you would have thought that would be more the traits of humanitarian work, But when we go back to the cultural aspects of humanitarian organizations, it's more like the masculine testosterone type attributes that seem to be higher value: aggression, narcissism, determination, no need for rest, machine like. Why do you think that they kind of seem to be the antithesis of humanitarian attributes? What and more militaristic in a way? Do you think there's something about the work that creates that, or is it the people? Is it chicken or egg, in your opinion? The work makes people like that, or people are? What do you think about that?
I think there's not much difference between the private world, the private industry, and the non-profit industry, in that sense that, those who climb, who have that, often have different attributes than those who, we just, I don't think it's specific to the humanitarian industry. That's what I want to say. Like I
It's
think
like
it's again like
society in general.
society, humankind in general. We just yeah, just to climb to the top, you have to, to be tough and rough um, and it's true. I have seen very few leaders who were emotionally intelligent in the humanitarian industry. I have seen some, but it's interesting how power can change someone sometimes. Like just having a higher role will just kind of change you. And I don't think it's specific to the humanitarian industry, but it's more remarkable because we are supposed to be more like emotionally intelligent people serving others out of the ego. And but at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we're influenced by society one way or another, very much so. And I mean, if you look at, like, again, this might be controversial, but if you look at national staff, depending on the culture, the environment they grew up in, if they climb up the ladder, they also become sometimes different people. You know, like it's so it goes to show again, it's all of us. All of us have are profoundly influenced by our environments, and then we create an identity. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's specific to the industry, but it is noticeable because something else is expected from us.
Where can people find you, and why should they go to Humanicare, and what can they get from Humanicare? You deserve some promotional explanation there for people who'd be interested in your approach, because I think it's quite interesting, the functional medicine approach and what you say about all of that. So where can people find you? What have you got to offer? And
yeah, so well, people can find me on LinkedIn mainly, Joanna Heyse. I do share a lot of my thoughts on the industry there, and I have I have the Humanicare page also on LinkedIn attached to my profile, where people can find a link to the platform itself. And the platform offers different tools. Some are paid to be paid for, some are free. Yeah, so on the platform itself, there's just a variety of tools that people can pick based on their individual needs. There's a community to join for free, actually, where you can share openly. And I have what I like the most about the platform actually is, of course, I'm passionate about functional medicine, but I really like the fact that I have different experts joining the platform and bringing their expertise. So I have a therapist specialized on trauma who worked for many years at MSF. I have life coaches, career coaches who have long experience within the humanitarian world, and more to come. Like I also had a specialist in cold therapy come in. So yeah, it's really, I'm happy to say it's building a community more than anything else. And then the tools are there to support, prevent burnout essentially, but really also just deal with stress and anxiety on a daily basis and find more balance in this job.